continuing our coverage of the player props released by Ceasers Sportsbook, focusing on wide receivers. We'll start with one of the biggest names in the NFL, Odell Beckham Jr. Seven receiving touchdowns, so none in the special teams game. Mike, where are you going with this one? Kind of a disappointing season last year for Odell.
Yeah, and I'm going to still go with the under here, Doug. Look, Beckham hasn't reached 7 touchdowns since 2016. It's been a while, and he only had, of course, the 4 last season. And by the way, 7, probably a higher bar than it may seem. Only 19 wide receivers reached 7 touchdown catches last season. And, if you look at Beckham himself, out-targeted and outproduced by Jarvis Landry in that Browns offense. Now you have Kevin Stefanski coming in as the head coach. And the Browns are going to pivot to more 12 packages, more 2 tight end sets, and perhaps a more run-heavier offense as well. Keep in mind, the Vikings under Stefanski, the second run-heaviest offense in the NFL last season. That's going to be more work at the goal line for Nick Chubb, of course. So I come in at 6.7. It's a close call, but, when it's close, I'm going to always lean the under on props. And by the way, that's 6.7. That's what the Browns projected 10th in the NFL in touchdowns. So it's not like I'm crushing that unit, but nonetheless, he still comes in a little short here.
Yeah, I can't fault you at all. I mean, look, injuries are always a huge variable in this. Beckham's going to see a lot of coverage. To your point, the 2016 number kind of resonates, so it's a pass for me, Anita.
Yeah, exactly what he said, right? Like a few things. You talk about a new head coach. He comes in. Mike's absolutely right. He's committed to running the football. And you don't have one, but you have 2 excellent running backs in this Cleveland Browns offense. And he likes to pass the ball to running backs as well out of the backfield. On top of that, let's be honest, Odell's had a lot of injuries. I covered him for 4 years when he was with the Giants. Let me list them for you. Hamstring, ankle, quad. He's coming off of a hip and groin surgery. So I'm with the under here as well. I agree with Mike.
Next wide receiver to discuss is DeAndre Hopkins, who has a new home here in Arizona. Kyler Murray, his new quarterback, 9 receiving touchdowns. Mike, that's a big number considering only 2 receivers went over that last season.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Only 6 receivers actually got to the mark of 9, and 2, of course, as you mentioned, reached the number 10. I mean, it's a hard bar to get to. So any receiver is going to be, I'm going to be hard pressed to go over 9 on. And look, even Hopkins, who has been one of the best receivers in the NFL over the past few seasons, he's been under 7 in 4 of his 7 NFL seasons. That should give you a pretty good idea of how hard it is to get to this mark. And he's only missed 2 games during that span. So he's been healthy and still has a hard time getting to that mark. The other thing I would think about here, the Cardinals last season, their first year under Cliff Kingsbury, scored 53% of their touchdowns through the air. That was the 4th lowest mark in the NFL. So Kingsbury obviously running the ball near the goal line. My projection, 7.8. Again, I'm not going to go too much higher than that with anyone, even a guy that sees heavy targets like DeAndre Hopkins. So it's under for me.
Yeah, me too. And this is one of my favorite plays. Look, there's kind of 2 schools of thought when you have a supporting cast of receivers. Is, well, the defense is going to have to cover everyone. You're going to be more open. But in the NFL, you still have to cover the quote-unquote bad receivers. So I think Kyler Murray just has more options around the goal line. So I think it's going to hurt Hopkins' production, even though it will help his team. Anita, what about you?
Yeah, I think the number is spot on here. So if I'm going to play this, maybe I'll have like a slight play on the under as well. You mentioned, in regard to how hard it is to get to 10 touchdowns. Here's the big reason why. We are seeing more 4 and 5 wide receiver sets in 2019, up 500 plays of 4 and 5 wide receiver sets compared to 361 in 2018. So I don't think the target share is going to be there. And also, let's be honest, he's playing in a better wide receiving core in Arizona than he was in Houston. So I think this number is spot on. Slight play with the under of 9.
So we've touched on a couple of the high-profile receivers. Now to our best bet. Sometimes guys are off the grid. We just touched on Cooper Kupp. How about 7.5 touchdowns this season after going for 10? Mike, which way you headed with your best bet?
Yeah, perfect. That is my best bet. I'm going under on this one, and I like this one a lot. Look, I get it. He has 16 touchdowns in his past 24 games, but if you look closer at his usage, his expected total during that span, 8.2, about half of that number. And that's going to look at his usage, his targets, the location on the field. So that tells us that he's been over his head. In fact, last season, only 6 end zone targets. That was 48th in the NFL. Only has 15 of those in his career. He does not get the ball near the goal line as much as it probably seems. Also, in the final month last season, his snaps plummeted. His routes dropped. His targets plummeted as well when they turn to using more 2 tight end sets. They're going to do that a lot this season. And look, he's still going to be a big part of the offense, but with overall potential volume coming down a little bit and certainly goal line work not being there for this guy, I think the touchdowns will be under 7.5. My projection here, 5.7.
That's interesting that his production tailed off at the end of last season. Let's go to another receiver, DJ Chark. Obviously had a burst onto the scene with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback with the Jags last year. Was a popular pickup for a lot of you fantasy footballers out there. Anita, this is one of your best bets. What do you got?
It absolutely is. The chemistry between him and Gardner Minshew was off the charts, especially keep in mind, after week 9, he played 95% of the offensive snaps. And when either Gardner or Nick Foles, keep in mind, Nick Foles was a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. I know we tend to forget that. Quarterback rating was over 100 compared to throwing to anyone else. Chark, he does not have a history of injury, so chances are hopefully he can play all the number of games that the NFL is expected to play, and they have a very favorable matchup against opposing secondaries in their division. So I love the over 6.5 touchdowns for Chark. I think he's going to have a phenomenal season this year. Another guy I want to throw your way that I really like as a rookie, and that's Henry Ruggs. We know he runs a 4.27 40. That's spectacular. But get this, even though he's a burner, Doug, the majority of his passing plays in Alabama were short passes, and that fits exactly into what Derek Carr does. Derek Carr's average passing yardage is about 6 or 7 yards, and that's the wheelhouse for Ruggs, and I think that's a really big reason why the Raiders drafted him. So I love Ruggs over 5 touchdown receptions this season.
Yeah, Caesars opened him 50-1 to be the first receiver drafted, and obviously a lot of people cashed it some big odds on that one. For my best bet, I'm going Stefon Diggs under 949.5 receiving yards. I know Bills Mafia, you guys are passionate, but look, his only 2 seasons reaching that total were both with Kirk Cousins. This Buffalo offense is a ball control offense. Yes, I know they've expanded their offense a little bit. They expect Josh Allen to take another step forward, but he's also a running quarterback too. And again, they're going to lean on their running game, lean on that excellent defense. 950 is a lot for Diggs, especially with a quarterback who's not all that accurate. Just saying. That'll do it for us. We'll be talking running backs in the next edition of Daily Wager.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.